We will use red clay for the pharynx, the esophagus, the stomach, and the small intestine. We will start with a 2 by 2 inch clay ball, but we'll probably need more. The palate will be created with white clay. The palate includes both the hard and soft palate. The tongue and liver will be created in rust-colored clay. The tongue is the muscle that begins the digestive process. We will make the pancreas in yellow clay, and we will make the gallbladder green. We will start by building the palate. The hard palate forms the roof of the mouth. Create an oval with the white clay. Food enters the digestive tract through the mouth or oral cavity. This is a mucous membrane-lined cavity. Use your clay roller to flatten out the clay. The soft palate projects back into the little flap that hangs down called the uvula. The uvula is a finger-like projection which extends downward from its posterior edge. You can shorten it with your wooden knife. The palate should be about 1 inch and the uvula ½ an inch. Now place the palate in the model directly above the mouth, but below the nasal cavity. It will project backward toward the pharynx. Next, we will pinch off a piece of rust-colored clay to make the tongue. The tongue is a solid muscle and is going to be a little longer than the palate. You can see the completed shape in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. Install the tongue in the model. It is going to reach all the way back to the hyoid bone, which is its bony attachment. From the mouth, food passes into the pharynx, posterior to the oral cavity. And from there, the pharynx directs the food down to the esophagus. The walls of the pharynx are muscular and propel food into the esophagus. Cut the opening into the pharynx at a downward angle, creating an angled funnel. This is what you see in the back of the mouth when you say "ah" to the doctor. The esophagus in real life is about 10 inches long and forms a passageway that takes food to the stomach. The esophagus propels food down to the stomach in a powerful peristaltic way, which is a muscular contraction of the esophagus. Place the combined pharynx and esophagus on the model. The pharynx is directly behind the palate and tongue. It runs like a funnel from the mouth to about halfway down the neck where it becomes the esophagus. The esophagus runs from the pharynx through the diaphragm to the stomach. Using the red clay, we are going to roll out the stomach. You can see the completed stomach shape in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. The stomach contains acids and enzymes that break down proteins. As we install the stomach, we will attach the esophagus to the stomach. The stomach will be on the left side of the abdominal cavity with the narrow end, the pylorus, pointing over to the right side. We are now going to build the first part of the small intestine, which is called the duodenum. Just roll a small piece of red clay into a thin tube. Then cut it back to about 4 inches. The duodenum attaches to the pyloric or narrow end of the stomach and then it forms a letter C shape so it curves around the head of the pancreas. Use your hands and fingers to reshape it. Now we will take another large piece of red clay to create the next two parts of the small intestine. The small intestine has three divisions of the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. We've already built the duodenum and are now building the jejunum and the ileum. In the human, the entire length of the small intestine is 18 feet, so in our mannequin we should make it 6 feet long. Use both hands and spread them apart to lengthen the tube. The small intestine is the major organ of absorption and is where the complete digestion of food takes place. In order to make the small intestine 6 feet long, we will roll out 6 12-inch tubes on our cutting board and attach them together. The duodenum forms a letter C shape so it can curve around the head of the pancreas. Roll out another piece and combine it with the first piece. Keep rolling pieces until you get it to be 6 feet long. Here you see the full length of the small intestine tube we just rolled out for the model. It is at least 6 feet long, more than twice as tall as the mannequin. Now we are starting to fold it up in a zigzag pattern. Bend the tube with your fingers back and forth, back and forth. We are not spiraling it around into a series of circles like a coiled rope. This is much more like the bottom edge of a pleated curtain. This will help the small intestine fit into the abdominal cavity. If you have found that your small intestine came up too short, you can always add pieces to it. Make sure you leave a straight line of the tube at the beginning and end of the small intestine to help us attach it to the mannequin. When installing the small intestine, push it very hard against the spinal column and the ileum. Plug the jejunum, or the top end of the small intestine, into the duodenum. Just smear the two tubes of clay together. The lower end of the ileum will plug into the cecum, which is the first part of the large intestine. Now take a piece of the orange clay and roll out a thicker 14-inch tube for the colon or large intestine. In a human, the colon is about 5 feet long and it absorbs water, leaving indigestible fiber and bacteria as fecal matter. Use your hands to roll the clay and spread your hands to increase the clay's length. The large intestine includes the ascending colon, the transverse colon, the descending colon, the sigmoid colon, the rectum, the anus, and its sphincter. Once you have rolled out your thick tube, take the wooden knife and score the tube into segments. These segments are called the hofstra of the colon. The hofstra are a series of pouches. You can see the completed colon in the bottom right corner of the screen. Now take one end of the colon and fold it over to create a pouch-like beginning of the colon. This is called the cecum. To connect the large intestine to the mannequin, begin with the ileocecal connection. So connect the bottom red tube to the pouch-like orange clay beginning of the colon.
And then bring up the ascending colon up to the first bend, which we call the hepatic flexure on the right side here, because it's right under the liver. Then we bring the transverse colon across to the splenic flexure on the left side. Then we bring down the descending colon, and then we make the S-shaped sigmoid colon. It's kind of like an S on its side running front to back, and bring it back to the rectum, which is vertical up against the sacrum, and then ending down at the anus.
Now just to review, here we are at the cecum, then going up the ascending colon, across the transverse colon, and then down the descending colon, turning again to the side, the sigmoid colon, the rectum, and the anus. For the pancreas, take a small piece of the yellow clay, roll it into a cone, and fold it into a comma shape. Once you have the comma, flatten it down a little bit. The pancreas produces enzymes that break down all types of food. It also produces the hormone insulin. So the pancreas belongs to both the digestive and endocrine system. The pancreas goes inside the C shape of the duodenum. It extends across the abdomen from the duodenum to the spleen. When installing the pancreas, you will have to pick up the stomach and the duodenum and sneak the pancreas underneath it. Make the liver out of a rust-colored clay. Shape it into a very thick curved triangle. The liver is the body's largest gland and is located in the upper right abdomen under the diaphragm. It produces bile. When you shape the curve of the liver, you want to hollow it out a little on the underside so it will conform to the diaphragm. Next, take a small pinch of green clay and roll a tiny tube for the gallbladder. The gallbladder is a small sac on the inferior surface of the liver. It stores bile. You can see the completed liver and gallbladder in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. As you place the liver, you have to push the other organs away and push the liver up under the diaphragm so it is being protected by the ribs. Notice it is reaching clear across from the right side of the body to the left. Use your hands to attach it to the model. Let's review the digestive system. Here is the palate. Here is the palate, the tongue, the pharynx, and the esophagus coming down through the thorax into the abdomen and into the stomach, through the stomach to the duodenum, and then through the zigzag of the small intestine to the cecum, to the ascending colon, then across along the transverse colon, then down the descending colon, to the sigmoid colon, and then the rectum and anus. Up here we have the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas behind everything else.